Texas Mike booked one of the all-time biggest winning poker sessions, winning over $1.6 million while playing 85% of all of his hands. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of the craziest hands from Texas Mike's big win. One of our first hands gets going here with Texas Mike opening it up with $4,000 with the king queen as Peter stacks a gigantic pot that he just won with his pocket jacks. Jack looks down at 10-6 suit on the button. He makes the call, and Peter flats here in the big blind with the ace jack. The flop comes out Jack 9-3 with a flush draw. So Texas Mike has a gut shot to the nuts with a 10. Peter has top pair, top kicker, and Jack's got a little backdoor special. Action checks over to Mike. He decides to bet here on the flop with his king queen, certainly fine. Jack makes a bit of a light float here with the backdoor draws. And now Peter springs to life with the check raise with ace jack. This is actually a pretty nice play from Peter. I think sometimes people get scared of over pairs in some of these spots, but all in all, you're definitely ahead of both players' ranges, and you do want to raise and get some value. So nice raise here from Peter on the flop. Now we're at Texas Mike. You could probably have to at least call here with your gutter to the nuts. You could maybe once in a while put in a 3-bet, put some pressure on, but I don't mind the decision to just call, which he makes. And now Jack decides to come along as well. This is a bit of a light float here from Jack. I think I'd rather just let this one go. We take a turn, and oh boy, is it a doozy. Man, imagine sitting there with the nuts in $1 million game. You have a chance for someone to give away $1 million, which is why I'm excited to announce I am giving away 1 million pennies. Okay, it's not $1 million bucks, but it's something. Anyone that purchases coins over on ClubWPT Gold and they have used the code Doug or code Doug will receive entry into this 10,000 Sweeps coin giveaway. 20 lucky winners will each receive 500 Sweeps coins, which are redeemable for $500. This applies to anyone who's used code Doug in the past or the future. And we're going to give away the coins on Sunday during my stream, so you can stop on by to see if you win. Once again, 20 people will win 500 Sweeps coins if you purchase gold coins this week using code Doug. But back to the action here. We have a beautiful 10 on the turn, giving Texas Mike the nuts. Peter wisely decides to slow down. And now Texas Mike springs to life, betting here with his very strong hand, building this pot with the nuts, and praying someone's got a good piece. Jack gets out of the way, even though he turns a pair. Now back over to Peter with ace jack. It's getting a bit dicey, but I do think you probably have to call once here with your top pair, top kicker. Although you could maybe start to make the argument you can just fold here on the turn. Perhaps you'd want to continue with some hands that have some potential to improve. This hand is quite vulnerable. Not really much you're looking for with the ace jack, so maybe you should even just fold on the turn, although it does feel pretty nitty. Peter has other ideas. He makes the call. We take a river, and it's a pretty sad one here for Texas Mike. The 7 of hearts. Now the flush gets in. Any 8 makes a straight. This is not a situation where it's very easy to get paid. And he does fire the river, but Peter ultimately does manage to let go here with his top pair, top kicker. On a board like this, it's really hard to even put your opponent on a bluff, particularly when you do have the ace of hearts. So a fairly small pot here by this game's standards, but already Texas Mike getting things going in the right direction, turning the nuts. The next hand we have, Texas Mike ends up risking it all, looking down here at pocket kings, the second best hand in poker. Certainly one you were excited to play even for $1 million. And Texas Mike gets the action rolling with a $12,000 raise, facing a couple of callers. One of the worst feelings in poker is opening up a premium hand, getting a ton of callers, missing the flop, and then ending up on an island versus a player that might have outflopped you. This, however, not what happens in this hand. With Jack re-raising with ace-9 suited, certainly a great play here from Jack to mix in. Out of position with a suited ace, you do like to re-raise these. And now Pav with a little bit of a loose, aggressive, cold 4-bet with the 7-5 suited. You know, this is actually a pretty good play. Every now and then you do want to come in with these low-suited kinds of hands. They actually do pretty well against the strong hands your opponents might have, and it makes you a little bit unpredictable. So I actually like this play from Pav as well. Also, some chance he's detected that Jack is a little bit on the weak side, and by all means, this play would probably work a good amount of the time. Unfortunately for Pav, he's about to run into pocket kings. Texas Mike decides it's not going to be time to solo play, and he rips it in here with pocket kings. I actually seem to remember a hand in the last season of $1 Million Game where he did this with ace king. So this is definitely a spot where your opponents may end up having to call you with hands like queens or ace king themselves. And yes, if you run to aces, it's a pretty big cooler, but that's the thing. You have to be willing to risk it even for $1 million. Unfortunately for Texas Mike, there's no one here to pay him off. However, he will take this one down pre-flop and make about $250,000. Not too shabby when your pre-flop jam wins you $250-ish thousand. Up about $500,000, this brings us to our next big Texas Mike hand, where we see some aggression pay off in a big way. The hand began straddled up to $4,000, and Steve kicks the action off, making $8,000 in the hijack to go here with Ace King. And now Jack looks down at pocket jacks. This is basically rolled up jacks, and he decides to 3-bet this one in position. Now the action folds to Texas Mike, who also looks down at Ace King, and he makes the cold 4-bet, certainly the standard play. This is now a very difficult situation for Steve. In this spot, when you have Ace King and you're facing this much action, you got to keep in mind these players are 400 blinds deep. This is a lot of big blinds to be raising and re-raising and trying to get in all the money. So the question is, how does he want to play this when faced with this reasonably sized 4-bet? With $86,000 out in front of him, Texas Mike now also has to feel a little bit uncomfortable. What if Steve does put in the re-raise? Do you want to put in effectively 380 big blinds or whatever this might be pre-flop with just Ace King? Anyway, the action now on Steve. What should he do here? And I think he's gonna have to mainly 5-bet this. Once you open and it goes 3-bet, 4-bet, you should really play 5-bet or fold. I don't think you need to play any calls here in this situation, as your price is terrible. I'd like to see a small-ish sized 5-bet here, something like 200, 220K, and then you can go from there. Steve decides to make it a good amount bigger here, kind of bombing it with the Ace King. Only issue with this one is going to put him in a pretty terrible spot if he does get re-raised, which unfortunately for Steve is ultimately what happens after making it $320,000 with his 5-bet with Ace King. Jack gets out of the way. Texas Mike asks for a count, and then he does his thing.
How much are behind 10?
After the 320?
Yeah.
3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
Steve's got him covered.
1.227.
No skill for off.
Texas Mike.
We can see the drawback now to making it this large 5-bet size, because if you do go this big, you almost are incentivized to call this jam if you believe that Texas Mike could have Ace King as well, or pocket queens, or maybe the occasional hand like Ace 5 suited. It's going to be a pretty big disaster for you to 5-bet Ace King for this much money and let it go. Now, if you think that Texas Mike's range is only going to be aces and kings, then it is smart to fold even with the amount of money you have out there in the middle. But I think if you go this big, you're likely going to have to call the jam, which is one of the reasons why I like the small size. Either way, it's a very difficult spot for Steve. You have to call off $1.2 million against a player that certainly could have hands like aces or kings. So I don't fault his play here. I think it's a tough spot and it's a lot of money. What would you guys do at home? You have Ace King here in Steve's shoes. How are you playing this? You playing it different? Are you re-raising the 5-bet? Are you calling the jam? Are you doing exactly what Steve did? Let me know in the comments below. Texas Mike now on a roll, and finally we see a collision between Texas Mike and Alan Keating, two of the loosest players that we can think of when we think about high stakes poker. And now they're going to collide here in this giant pot. Peter gets the action started, opening it up with Ace Queen suited to $7,000. I think we have a $2,000 straddle on board in this hand. It's a little tough with the commentary because these hands are constantly changing based on who straddled. Either way, it's a $7,000 raise. And now Texas Mike with a very peculiar call here in the cutoff with 10-6. I think he's making a bit of a statement. He's up $1 million. He's here to play some hands. Certainly not going to be knitting it up now with this big lead, but I think I'd like to see him let go of a hand this shitty. Although, what am I going to say? The guy's playing 85% VPIP. I guess he's doing his thing. Now, not to be outdone, Keating looks down at an offsuit weak king. So, I mean, I guess just fuck it. Let's play whatever cards we got. This is poker at these stakes. You just play whatever 2 cards you've got. This is, you know what? 500 1K 2K is essentially bingo. You just pick 2 cards, you put money in, you see what cards come out. You try and get 5 in a row. I don't know, guys. I don't know. What can I say? I play 11 sweeps coins tournaments on Sundays in the Code Doug kickoff. So clearly I'm not qualified. Anyway, back to the hand. Steve now calls with 10-8 offsuit, which looks like a goddamn premium with the kind of bullshit we're seeing here from these players. We take a 4-way flop, and it is a doozy. 6-6-4, 3 of a kind here now for Texas Mike. 3 of a kind with a better kicker for Keating. And now Peter checks to Texas Mike, who decides to bet half pot. I'd like to see a bit of a smaller flop size, particularly in multi-way pots. We tend to like to go a little bit smaller, especially on these spots that are a bit more polarized. Either way, I do like the bet from Texas Mike. And now to Keating with King 6. Versus small sizes, I think King 6 would mainly raise. Versus this bigger size, I think calling becomes a bit better, which is what Keating decides to do. The turn rolls off an offsuit 3 after the other players get out of the way, and Texas Mike continues to blast, betting $42,000 now here on the turn. And this is the point where Keating decides it's time to spring the trap, making it $160,000 to go. I like this line from both players. Back over to Texas Mike. When you have a 6 here with the overcard, you're going to have to call. Obviously, you could improve to essentially the nut boat if a 10 comes off. And then, of course, there's a decent chance Keating is bluffing. And when you have a 6, it's a little bit more likely. So in this spot for Texas Mike, I would prefer to always call, which he does. We have a very big pot developing here as we take a river. Texas Mike needs a lot of help, and he's going to get it. 3 pairing the board. Now both players have the exact same full house. 3 6s, 2 3s for their boats. It's a little bit of an action killing card now. Obviously, all of the trip 6 hands are the same value. Neither player can really have a 3, so there's not a lot of value to be had. And if Keating did have a hand like, let's just say, a straight here on the river, he's probably going to check it back. There's not really a lot of value he can get with a straight with this double paired board. Anyway, Texas Mike does check. Keating decides to bet $225,000. This bet looks good. And now Texas Mike decides he's going to go ahead and raise. This is a bit of an interesting spot to me, and I've been thinking about it a little bit while trying to prepare this video. And I think in this situation, you're probably mainly going to want to just call. If Texas Mike raises here, he's not really going to get action from any hand that he beats. Keating is certainly not going to bet call a straight or a 3 or anything like that. So realistically, he's kind of hoping maybe Keating has a hand like pocket 4s and is going to make a crying call. But realistically, I don't think that's the case. I think in this situation, the way that Texas Mike should play it is he should mainly be calling in this spot. And then when he does raise, it should be all in with hands like pocket 6s, pocket 3s, or 6-4 suited. And then once in a while, you throw a 6 in there to put your opponent in a miserable spot. I mean, let's just say you do jam here and Keating has a hand like queen 6. He's probably going to have to call, but it is for so much money. And then you can stack him when you have those better boats. I'm not sure if that's correct or not. The solver is going to do a better job than I am, but I'm just letting you know my opinion. And, you know, I have played some high stakes poker along the way. That said, I just don't think this raise accomplishes very much, even though it is incredibly likely you do have the best hand. And if you are going to raise with a hand like this, I think you should probably be min raising to $450,000 or trying to go all in to get your opponent off a chop. Either way, Texas Mike is from Texas, or rather is not from Texas, but went to school in Texas, and embracing that Texas spirit. Everything's bigger here, including our raises, making it $825,000 to go here with a 6. Keating does make the call. We chop up a $2 million pot, and even though this hand is a chop, I thought it was an important one for us to take a look at. Our next hand is once again some tangling between Texas Mike and Alan Keating. Keating trying to put his foot down in this one. Texas Mike opening it up with the king deuce of spades here in the cutoff. And now on Keating coming along for the ride here on the button with the 4 deuce suited. We take ourselves a 3-way flop. King 10 on the flop. 3 of a kind for Texas Mike. And he decides to go ahead and c-bet with his trips. And Keating picks probably not the best time to spring the trap, making it $45,000 to go here from this bet from Texas Mike. Now, I understand what Keating's thinking. Basically, Texas Mike is playing almost every single hand. He's betting tons of flops. How often can this guy really have it? Unfortunately for him, he's running into 3 of a kind. Texas Mike now makes the call, and he would certainly have lots of weaker hands he wants to protect, so it does make sense to call here with his 3 of a kind. And the turn comes a jack. The jack does not change much for either player, but in theory now there are some straights, so both players have to be at least a little more cautious. Not the game plan here though for Alan Keating. With just 4 high, he fires up $100,000 on the turn, back over to Texas Mike now with trips. Really no option here for Mike other than just a smooth call and play some rivers. He does call, and the river is a nightmare card for Texas Mike. The queen of diamonds completes the flush and makes it 1 to a straight, where an ace or a 9 has a straight. He checks, and now Keating decides to fire the river. The third barrel here from Alan Keating with just 4 high, $215,000 to go. It's kind of hard to even imagine hands that you could be beating here for Texas Mike.
I gotta lose everything, right? Like, is there a hand that could possibly raise the flop?
And that is what's going through his head as he ultimately decides he's going to let this one go. But I have to say, guys, I really do like bluffing in this spot with Texas Mike's hand. You know it's very unlikely your opponent has king, queen, king, jack, or king 10 because you do have a king. And you also raised pre-flop, so you can have king, king, queen, queen, jack, jack, 10, 10, king, queen, king, jack, king 10. You can have all kinds of these good hands, as well as the occasional hand like ace, queen of diamonds, or queen, 9 of diamonds. So in this situation, I would actually like to see Texas Mike maybe once in a while work in a raise and bluff with his 3 of a kind, blocking these full houses. Now, a little scary to do that when you're playing every single hand. Of course, your opponents are a little less likely to believe you, but I do think it would make some sense. Anyway, if you do not raise with trips, I do like fold, which is what Texas Mike decides to do. The small misstep here from Texas Mike in an otherwise flawless session. Our next hand is a crazy one here with pretty much the entire table coming along for the ride. We actually have a family pot as all 7 players decide just to limp into this one and or complete their blinds. And we've got some doozies here. We got the 10-3 off, the jack-6 off, the 9-5 suited, the queen-jack off, the king-10 suited, a diamond in the rough if I've ever seen one, the 6-5 off, and the 10-4 suited. Just a whole bunch of premium hands going to war here in this limped pot. And Jack, Jack 9 on the flop actually connects with a surprising number of them. We have 3 of a kind here for Texas Mike, but unfortunately he's outkicked by Steve, who actually has a better 3 of a kind. We have a gut shot, straight flush draw here for Jack with his king 10 of hearts, a huge flop for that hand. 9-5 does flop a pair, although that pair will quickly learn that it is not going to be good. And then we have some various riffraff. The action gets started over to Steve, who's currently stuck piles of money. This is his chance to try and win some back. And he does go ahead and bet the flop here, $17,000 to go. Jack does call with his hand. Texas Mike calls with his hand. And we're off to the turn, which brings the 3 of diamonds. All 3 players still probably pretty happy with their hand strength here on the turn, although Jack not the most thrilled he bricked the turn draw. And now Steve fires out once again for an almost pot-sized bet of $60,000. I think Jack shoes here, king 10 of hearts. You simply just have to call and look to play some rivers. You do have a bunch of equity even up against 3 of a kind. Once he makes the call, Texas Mike should start to feel a little concerned about the scenario with 3 of a kind, but you still do have to call as well. And we're taking a 3-way river with $250,000 out there in a limped pot. The river is a queen. 2 players extremely excited about this. Steve now rivers the second nut boat, and Jack now has a straight. He's completed the straight to the king, and Steve decides to spring into life with an overbet here on the river of $320,000. This is now a very, very, very tough spot for Jack. I don't really fault him either way with what he wants to do. I will note, when the board is paired and you're 3-way on the river, typically speaking, when people bet, it means they have a boat, because it's pretty likely 1 or 2 people have the 3 of a kind out there. So with that in mind, I would probably let it go, but it is a very difficult spot, and I understand why he decides to call. Now over to Texas Mike with 3 of a kind with the 6 kicker. He tanks for a while here to try and make the right decision. Obviously playing a lot of hands. You do have 3 of a kind, but I'd love to see Texas Mike just let this one go. It's a little bit too weak of a hand. You have to beat both players in order to win. What hands is Jack calling with? What hands is Steve betting with? You'd have to assume someone has a Jack somewhere, and if they do, they're going to have you beat. So I think this is a spot Texas Mike maybe could have gotten away, even though he does end up making the call.
So Steve doesn't think anybody has a Jack. You don't believe Steve. Call.
There's a call. Look at this, max value, absolute max value. Jack said, Queen Jack. He nailed it, but he couldn't fold the straight. Mike overcalls. Steve goes 320 into 240, overbets the pot on the river and gets paid by 2 players. What a dream scenario as he wins a $1.21 million pot.
Our final hand of the evening is going to be a good one here for Texas Mike, who looks down at pocket aces. Look, pocket aces are a dangerous hand whenever anyone gets them, but they're especially dangerous when people are playing 85% VPIP, and he decides to raise it up with his aces, obviously, as he has with many other holdings. This is particularly bad for Alan Keating, who looks down at pocket jacks, and you have to imagine Keating extremely excited to get jacks against this very loose, aggressive player. But unfortunately for Keating, he's toast unless he hits one of the 2 remaining jacks. Once he makes it $42,000 to go, back over to Texas Mike, he makes $150,000 to go. These guys are deep. $2 million effective stack size. My Lord, is this a big game. If this ends up getting all in, it is a $4 million pop. We have some poker to play first, though. And when Texas Mike makes $150,000 to go, Keating now has to make a decision. How does he want to play these jacks? And I strongly advocate for call. I do think against aggressive players, you need to sometimes 5-bet them here. You might want to use some hands like ace-5, ace-4 suited, maybe ace-king, ace-queen, and then your really good hands like aces or kings. That said, when you 5-bet in these spots, you might end up punting off a $700,000 pot at Poker at the Lodge. I'm saying that from personal experience.
He's going for it.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
Got him. Got him. Got him. Got him, baby. Back to the action, though. Keating does decide to play it passively here with the jacks and just call. And we take a flop of queen, 8, deuce, 2, diamonds. This flop is not great for Keating. There is one overcard, but if his opponent has ace, king, he whiffed. So not a board you hate seeing, but not one of your favorites either. Texas Mike now continues at $130,000 to go. This is a little bit big on the flop from Texas Mike. I think I'd like to see a bit of a smaller size, but it's still obviously, of course, fine to be betting, and you're going to want to do that with lots of hands when you 4-bet because your range is so strong. Keating now decides to float the flop with pocket jacks. Certainly the correct play. You beat all of your opponent's bluffs and ace king, so there are definitely enough hands here to want to float on the flop. The turn comes the 9 of diamonds. Both players are not going to be thrilled to see this as they both have a heart and a club. So the flush completes on the turn, which generally speaking should slow down the action because neither player has the flush or has a good redraw to improve on a diamond. The action does check through, and now we take a river. The offsuit 7, a pretty safe card for both players here on the river. Jack 10 already was there on the turn. Neither player is going to have 6-5. And then 10-6, of course, really, really, really unlikely. The action now goes check, check, and Keating manages to not lose all that big of a pot here with his pocket jacks. I do think on the river, I'd like to see a value bet here from Texas Mike. I think if your opponent had aces beat, they're going to bet the turn. Perhaps he really didn't want to risk getting raised. I don't know. But aces are almost certainly going to be good on this turn check, check line. And there is some room to get some value in case your opponent has a hand like jacks or 10s or a queen, something like that. I'd like to see a river bet here from Texas Mike, something in the vicinity of a couple $100,000 to maybe $300,000 or $400,000. Anyway, aces do hold, and that's the last big pot that Texas Mike played on the day. Once again, coming in with an 85% VPIP, completely nuts, giant win, plus 1.6 million. You just don't see sessions like this. Frankly, we've not seen any sessions like this since the $1 million game last year, although we did see some pretty big wins on PokerGo's high stakes poker. This game was a crazy one, and I'm excited to see how the action goes today. It's going to get back in the mix with the second session. Definitely going to want to check that out. And once again, if you want to win 1 million pennies, or rather $500, make sure to enter the Code Doug giveaway. I'll see you guys on my stream on Sunday for an 11 Sweeps Coins tournament. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. Maybe I'll play Season 4. Gonna have to get together some pretty hefty number of $11 buy-ins to be able to afford to buy into this thing, but who knows? Maybe I can do it.